Hi, and welcome back to the channel. We're going to be doing another movie review. We haven't done too many of these, but this is Star Wars. So, of course, we're going to be talking about the latest and last chapter in the Skywalker saga. And before we get started, I already posted my very short, spoiler-free review or my initial thoughts. And holy shit, that got a lot of hate, a lot of flack, because I don't know why, but my guess is a lot of people did not like that I liked the movie or that I enjoyed it and had fun with it. Definitely gonna explain more in this review why I did have a good time and why we actually both had a good time with the movie. But there's a lot more to it than that, of course. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination. And there's a lot that I would have rather have seen than what we got. But what we got is what we got. So we have to... That's all we can look at and try to... Not try. It sounds wrong when I say try to enjoy, as it's something that we're trying to force ourselves to enjoy the movie or something. That's definitely not how it is, but we are focusing on as much good stuff as possible, or trying to get as much enjoyment out of it as we possibly can, because it's just, for us at least, it takes a lot of energy to only focus on what could have been instead of what is. But I totally understand that it is hard not to go into this movie without any expectations and not having anything that you really want to see happen in this last chapter, because it is the last episode, at least so far. They might revisit it at some point. But what I just wanted to say with my initial thoughts review there is that it's we all have different opinions, and it's totally fine. No one, this movie is not going to be for everybody anyways. They cannot satisfy everybody. That is an impossible task. And it was almost an impossible task even for JJ just to finish this new trilogy off, because of all that happened. But yeah, we'll get more into all of that. But I'm gonna let Kat here lead the battle, so to say, and what we're going to be talking about, because she has been writing some stuff down a little bit at least, and we will do our best to communicate what we think or how we feel about this movie, what we liked, what we didn't like, and just ultimately the state of Star Wars at the moment, when you look at this movie and all that we've gotten with the sequel trilogies and what came before. All of that. But yes, I'm gonna and kick it over to you.
First off, you might notice that I'm yawning a lot because I'm very tired. I'm pulling all-nighters to get done with my master's thesis, so yes. I'm a bit tired at the moment. And for fun and games, you can try to see how many times I yawned during this whole
try to
review.
Count.
Yeah. Keep count, yeah.
We're filming this on Thursday night. We just watched The Mandalorian as well. It's not, this spoiler review is not going to be out until a couple of days. You know that if you're watching it. But we wanted to get it out of the way, because we don't have time to do it any other day or time, like before Christmas at least, and maybe not even before New Year's. So that's why we're doing it now, even though we are tired, and Kat especially, because master's thesis, and it's being handed in very soon. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Yes, first off, I really liked the movie. I felt it was a good movie. I cried, and then I cried a little bit more, and then some. So that's usually a good sign. I started crying with when we thought that Chewie was killed by Rey, and she was with this whole power thing, that she was suddenly emitting force lightning.
Yeah. Oh fuck that scene.
Yeah.
That almost turned the whole thing around for me as well. But
Yeah, you were almost leaving the theater.
Like, you cannot do Chewie dirty like that. But
No.
thankfully they didn't. I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, hell no. That cannot be the end of one of the most beloved characters.
Yeah,
But,
I started crying there, and I almost just
kept on
through the whole thing. As I cried so much that it kind of, I could feel like my tears going down my cleavage, and it was like, that was a bit weird. Okay, I digress. Of course, I didn't like everything. There's a lot of minor details that I really didn't like. Just to put it out there, so it's not like, it's definitely not my favorite Star Wars movie of all time.
Oh, not mine.
Definitely not.
No.
But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a good movie, and of course, there's a lot of things, and we cannot go into detail with
everything.
all of it.
No.
Also because I have a very bad memory, so I cannot remember every single detail that happened throughout 2 hours and 22 minutes of my life.
Yeah, and we're not going to do a 2-hour review, so...
No, exactly. So I'm just going to say some of the things, and maybe if I am reminded of some of the other things during, I will talk about them as well.
Yeah.
So one of the major issues I had with this one was actually the pacing. Because the whole first part of the movie, the first half, approximately the first half of the movie, was just one big treasure hunt where we were flying throughout the galaxy, and there was one action scene after the other. It was very hard to keep up with, and it was, ideally, I think it was unnecessary. It was completely unnecessary. All this back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I think the major turning point must have been when they were on...
The moon of Endor?
Yeah, one of the moons of Endor, where with the whole... with the...
Death Star.
Death Star,
Yeah.
The wreckage of that. I think that was around that time when it kind of, suddenly the movie actually got like a clear
through line
direction and plot. And I think everything before that was a bit like, it was rushed, and it was, as I said, the pacing was very hard to keep up with.
Yeah, almost like they were playing catch up. Like they're like, we need to get through a lot of stuff.
And that they had to cram in all of these things. Maybe even because, of course, it was very hard to lift the burden that was the wreckage of The Last Jedi. And spoiler alert, I was not... I'm not overly fond of
fond of
The
Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
So it was very hard. Well, it was a very hard task to pick up the pieces from that train wreck. And I think they really tried. And I think JJ really tried. And maybe he was even like, okay, screw this. I'm just going to cram 2 whole movies that I really would have loved to see into this whole thing. And that's also, I felt like he scrambled a little bit with like a plot-wise.
Yes.
So he just, okay, what can I do? What can I do? He had like a Rolodex of like, who can I resurrect and stuff. And I do not like resurrections. I do not.
Yes. As Thanos says, no more resurrections. Yes.
Yes. And of course, sometimes it could be very nice. I mean, like, I was really happy when they resurrected Jon Snow. He's one of the only resurrections I was actually very happy about.
Spoiler alert for that, but of course you've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. But usually I'm not like, I think they destroyed Darth Maul's character completely by resurrecting him.
I don't agree with that.
No.
To be on the record,
This is my opinion alone, and I'm not very fan of resurrection. It's fine if other people are, and if it works for them, it's fine. I'm accepting it. But I just felt like it was a bit like JD was kind of, or the writers were scrambling for something they could drive this plot with.
Yes.
And that was the Emperor Palpatine. And
he back.
Yeah, so he was back, and I think I don't know, it's I just felt it was a little bit, as I said, a little bit of scrambling and stuff, but I will get more into details with all that when we come to the later on, because the pacing also meant that we got introduced to a lot of new characters, We had like Finn's like third love interest. We got
Dominic Monaghan playing a resistance soldier officer of some sort. Minor character, but
and it felt like all of these new characters. Also the very beautiful black woman. Also like a previous stormtrooper. I cannot remember what she's called.
Yes. Yeah, I don't remember.
We had like
she was good though.
She was good, but I would have loved to learn more about her. I would love to have delved into her character and explore her. We got this sorry character, this female
previous love interest of Poe's, maybe, or he ran with that crew at some point as a spice smuggler.
And we learned a little bit more about Poe's background. It was like if we had more time to explore all of these people, it would have been fine. But it felt like also with General Hux. He was one of my favorite characters from the Force Awakens, and I felt like The Last Jedi kind of did him a huge disservice.
It made him into a comic relief.
Instead of being like, he was very badass, I think, in the first one. And I love Donald Gleason.
But And Donald Gleason, he's such an amazing actor. Yeah.
And I think he's amazing. And I was just so sad to see that this amazing character was... and then they kind of used him for like... then he was the spy and everything.
Yeah, one small twist there where it's like, oh, you're the spy? Surprise.
Yeah, and he had like 3 lines and then was killed off. And I think it was such a shame because, of course, we got this other kind of a new Hux, or, like a new Grand Moff Tarkin or whatever.
I'm going to find his name real quick because I actually really enjoyed him.
He was amazing. Yeah, that was fine. But I've just felt like all of these new characters, they were so unnecessary. Because we didn't get much about them. They could have been so interesting to delve into the characters. And
Richard E. Grant, that was his name, playing General Pride. But
yeah. And it just felt like they could still have kept General Hux and maybe restored some of his demeanor, like he's very stern and very imperial demeanor. They could still have kept that, because then with the whole Palpatine thing, that maybe he could like kind of turn on Kylo, maybe. There
could have been something interesting there if they have, like, if he had gravitated towards Palpatine, because hey, if Palpatine becomes the new leader, then we can push Kylo to the side, hopefully.
Because of course they would have Kylo and Hux would have has this thing.
Yeah, they fucking hate each other.
So I just felt that all of these new people, it was kind of in vain with all these new people.
Even though it's nice characters, it's just they were just thrown into a story that's already very packed, and you have to explain so much. And it is, like you said, almost like 2 movies in one. Like if this was actually episode 8 and 9, and JJ had to could space this story out over 2 movies, then I don't think we would have been bothered as much by the new characters, because they would have had room to grow as well, and they wouldn't have taken away from characters that we've already met and established. So
you can say what you want about Rose. I don't like her specifically as well.
Me neither.
But
JJ didn't like her either.
Clearly. But she was taking like a backseat to this whole story, and I think
very much a backseat.
And it's almost like as if her hurt about being pushed aside as a character almost shined through the way of her
performance.
Yeah. And it's like now we got this like a third love interest for Finn. Like, what the heck?
Yes. We don't know. There might not be any romantic intentions there, but at least it can come off as seeming like that.
Yeah.
And maybe they just had a connection because they were both like deserters from the First Order and previous stormtroopers.
Yeah. And I just felt like it was a bit like if you build like a trilogy and you will have like the build up in the first 2 episodes, and then you'll have to round off in the last one. That means no more new characters, no more you could have a few new characters, of course. But if you're opening all of these new things, it's like it's spreading out, and it's like you won't have that plot very nicely needed.
Yes.
So
like how many new characters did we actually get in like Return of the Jedi? Like really meaningful side characters and new characters there. There was a bit like the Ewoks. It's more like a people, and they were very much connected to the planet and the battle at the end. Then we got the stuff at the start with Jabba's palace and all that happened when that with them trying to rescue Han. But we've heard about Jabba before. We knew about all that, so it's not like it comes out of nowhere and where we have to be introduced to a whole new concept or something. And even with something like you were talking about, like Poe's past, it could have been interesting to look more into that. But because of the way it was handled in this movie, it was just it came off as kind of like a side note where it's like, oh, it could have been interesting. Like, he has this past and he's able to hotwire these speeders, and Finn is like, how do you know so much about, oh, okay. And we go to the planet with his former crew, but we never really got into what it was that he did, that he didn't like, or he wanted to get away from, or his real past as this spice smuggler was just mentioned, and we didn't see it. They didn't really show us, but they didn't have time to either. So I do understand that, and there is an element of this was not gonna be a 3 or 4 hour movie anyway. So they're still kind of sticking to. I know not all Star Wars movies are the same length or it has the same runtime, but they're kind of in the same ballpark between like 2 hours and 2.5 hours, pretty much. So that's what we have to play with, and
yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, we've got a new droid, and I am not one to just easily dismiss new droids, but we
Leo.
heard that it was mishandled. But we didn't get into that as well. And
No, it's mistreated by Ochi, this guy that, well, we established he's a bad bloke because killed Rey's parents and all that, but yeah. Digress.
And it's just, it's so sad we get all these small hints about these characters and a lot of introductions, and I just think it was such a shame and a waste of like time and characters, really,
stuff we could have delved into, but
we could have known so much more about other things that felt somewhat more relevant to the plot.
Yes.
And one other thing about this whole situation with people we already know, I've noted the squad, because it feels like we have the squad with Finn and Rey and Poe, and it feels a lot like they're kind of modeled after
the Last Jedi.
Luke, Leia, and Han.
Oh, okay.
And they have this some sort of chemistry, but not really. And it's like
There's a lot of bickering going on. A lot of arguing.
And of course, there's a lot of bickering between, especially Han and basically everyone else. But you know, it's this bickering. It was just I didn't feel it. I didn't feel like it was cute. I felt like it was unnecessarily harsh, even because of these characters we met in The Force Awakens. And I know they've been through a lot, and I know that they probably have worked together for months, years. Yeah, very long time. So of course they will change their interactions in like tone levels and stuff. But in The Force Awakens, these people were so naive, and they were happy, and they were like, Poe was like this really nice guy, and he was like instant bromance with Finn, and everything was very cool, I think. And suddenly he became this angry, bitter
commander sort type who's like, it's
it just hurt my feelings, man. It feels like they were trying to push the squad, and we haven't really seen like any interaction in The Last Jedi.
No, they
were, like,
really split them up there, and even when you're talking about Poe, like Poe and Rey didn't have any interaction in The Force Awakens, because that's just the plot dictated that, like, they didn't really meet up, even though they were at the same base at one point, at the Resistance base. We didn't get a conversation with them. Apparently, there's one in the novel version, but Ryan kind of, I don't know if you forgot that, he probably never read the novelization, but he went a different direction and had them introduce like themselves like to each other at the end of The Last Jedi, as they've never met each other before. And that was a bit strange, like having Leia and Han only meet up at the end of The Empire Strikes Back. I know that there's a lot of different history with the characters and all that, but it's as you say, it felt a little bit off and weird, their whole chemistry. Even though I totally get why JJ did what he did with getting the squad together, as you call them, because this is the core cast, this is the core group of the new sequel trilogy. They are the leading roles. So having them be together and go through these adventures together is something that's what he wanted to build towards. And I can imagine that's what he probably thought that was going to happen in episode 8, that these characters were going to spend more time together, that he was just introducing them in The Force Awakens and building them up. And then they could go on adventures together and learn more about each other and get very much closer. But they didn't really spend any time together in The Last Jedi. And now in The Rise of Skywalker, we are led to believe that they have been working together for a while. I don't know if it's a year after or what it is, but they're also bickering a lot. And you can make, like, it does make sense in the way that Rey or Poe and Finn, they're like, Rey, you're our best soldier, we need you out there, stop wasting time on this force thing, like we need you on the front lines, this is still a war, we're still trying to win by all means necessary pretty much, and we didn't get any allies, so we're stretched thin. And like, it does make sense why they are so tense and why they're like, we need to do this, it matters, and we need to be fucking quick about it, because apparently Palpatine is alive now, and he's bringing like the final order, and in 16 hours, or what did they say at the start, like he's gonna exact his revenge on the entire galaxy. So there's like a 16-hour window where they have to act, and they have to act quickly. So in that sense, it made sense, but it was still just enjoyment-wise for us, it was a bit frantic to look at sometimes, and yeah.
Yeah, and what I just wanted to say with this is just I feel these characters were changed in a direction that I was not very comfortable with. I was not very happy about it, because I really liked Finn from The Force Awakens, because he was so lively and naive, and everything was new to him, and he was this jolly, happy-go-lucky guy, and he was a little bit awkward, and he was super funny, and John Boyega is such a nice guy.
Yes, and more naive. He was a more naive character, as you say, and they tend to come off as more light. It's more lighthearted in a way. And
definitely. He was more lighthearted. And, and this a little bit about the same with Poe, but we already covered that. Let's talk about Rey and Kylo and like that whole Force thing and all of that, because we ended up at Exegol, this Sith planet.
Yes.
And
hidden Sith planet.
Yeah. That was amazing. I loved. I really like Sith lore, and because I've played a lot of Star Wars: The Old Republic, so that whole my favorite planet of all is like Korriban. So it's like the Sith homeworld almost.
Yes, even though we know George changed the name, but
it's always
always going to be Korriban for Kat, at least. We know it's Moriband now.
So I absolutely love this whole Sith lore thing, but we didn't really get a chance to like explore these ruins. We didn't get a lot of time to explore like Sith history or anything. Like we saw this huge arena almost with like
these disciples of Palpatine, Sith disciples, and
and
acolytes. I think
whole these big statues of old Sith and stuff. It was kind of cool, and we didn't get enough time. And it's like, once again, if we had spent a little bit more time just getting to know all of this, and
and getting more into, because I know we're talking about Rey and Kylo now, but I feel like Palpatine is a big part of that arc in the whole
Yeah.
story as well. And as you say, it would have been cool to know more about, like, okay, so you're alive, but how exactly did you survive? Maybe, or just allude to it.
Are you actually Darth Plagueis?
Yeah, he created Snoke. He said, how did you create him? Like, why did you opt to create him instead of just having yourself be the face of the First Order and the Supreme Leader? Why did
Yeah.
you choose to hide yourself until now? And but that
That's
is
what I
more.
meant with that scrambling thing. It felt like he was just scrambling
It
for.
was most likely an afterthought. I know that JJ has said himself that it was always part of the plan that Palpatine was supposed to come back and was always supposed to be like they're supposed to close off the whole saga with him because he's the big bad of the whole thing. But I just don't buy it.
And also,
Yeah,
I really liked Snoke. I thought he was awesome. And then
very
Ryan
interesting
Johnson
character.
killed him off, and it's like, and it was so easy suddenly. It was,
Yeah.
and it's
So
once again,
so
it's one of the things I didn't like about The Last Jedi, because I really think they established such a nice character like Snoke, and there's so much mystery about him that I just felt was not properly explained or probably exploited or whatever.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was such a shame. So it felt like he was just scrambling for a big
Yeah.
baddie. Now he killed off his
It
new big baddie. So
exactly, and it could have made a lot of sense if they had kept Snoke alive, and maybe if we did have to link Snoke to someone or something that we know, then we could have had the big
Darth
revelation
Plagueis.
at the end that yes, it's Darth Plagueis, and then we'll still link back to Palpatine. It's still a part of that whole thing, and the Sith and cheating death and all that, like they still brought that back in this one with Palpatine, and he even like recited some of the stuff that he said at the opera in Revenge of the Sith to Anakin. But yeah, it did very much feel like it. Oh, holy shit! Break Palpatine glass in case of emergency, because we need a big bad in this one, and it's not gonna be the one that JJ created in episode 7 because he got killed off. We once again totally understand why he chose to bring Palpatine back, because it would also be maybe a little bit weird to close off this trilogy without having a clear-cut bad guy, especially if he had already like decided that he was going to redeem Kylo. And yeah, so we needed someone, especially that was linked to the dark side. It couldn't just be General Pride, even though he was also a good new bad guy in the First Order. But yeah, I get why JJ wanted to bring Palpatine back and use him to close this thing out, and why they also did the thing with, in the end there, with him being like, I am all the Sith. Like the whole thing is being linked to me now, all the Sith and that. So, but I can tell that you wanted to.
And I really wanted to get into it.
Get into that.
I think there's this duality in the Force that is very well explained in the Clone Wars, with the father and the sister.
That the Mortis stuff that would have been extremely cool if they had maybe alluded to some of that instead, because now that we are talking about the deeper levels of the Force and the duality, and if the Force even has a will and stuff with the balance and all that, because if you haven't watched Clone Wars, there is this Mortis arc where they get into stuff, the stuff about the father and the daughter and the son, as you alluded to, and the balance and the chosen one. And I feel like maybe they could have brought that stuff back, but I also see why it, like, if they already had this movie down, like what they wanted to happen, it's hard to add more to an already very, very crowded movie. So I get that as well. It's just, it would have been cool to see.
But what I wanted to say was that they're talking about, in this episode, they're talking about the balance of the Force and stuff. And Rey is also saying that she's got all the Jedis with her. So it's kind of this balance between like dark side and light side, and I kind of liked that whole thought. But then it was something with like then Rey and Kylo had this I think it's called a dyad.
Yeah, there was a dyad in the Force, which, if believe Palpatine, it was something that only happens like very, very rarely every 1,000 generations or something.
And it just felt a little bit off. Of course, they have this very nice connection, but we got that explained in The Last Jedi, that Snoke actually forced that upon them. And that could easily have been like a remnant of that, because now they were linked through Snoke's power, or like he linked them up.
Yeah, they were going to continue to have that link.
Yeah, exactly. So that was just a little bit like, they could have skipped that part maybe, and then focused on like the balance and like the with the Jedis and the Sith. And that also leads me to, I think Rey should have stayed dead because of the balance, actually. Because I think like Kylo should have been alive instead, because
or Ben at that point.
Yeah, of course, yeah, but he should have been the one alive instead, because then there will be, because we eradicated like the Sith and all the bad stuff that happened, like
yes, all that was linked to the Sith. Yes,
yeah, and then we would have like the light side, and then there would be like an unbalance in the Force, imbalance, and since they brought balance up themselves, I think they should have kept the balance. I understand why they kept her alive, because she's a new lead and she's like the new heroine and stuff like that. But it would make sense that you create this balance once again by letting her die.
Yeah, and then having more of not a clear-cut dark side or a Sith, and definitely not a clear-cut Jedi or anything in Ben, having him survive as the only one to carry on this legacy of a Force user.
And as Skywalker, the last Skywalker. I was actually at some point thinking that the rise of Skywalker, hey, that was Ben Skywalker.
Ben Skywalker.
Like, he was rising.
Would kind of make sense for him to go back to the homestead afterwards, the last homestead, and look up like, okay, where do I come from? Where did Luke come from? And all that. And then he could have been like, okay, my mom has passed, my father as well, Han Solo. I'm going to take the name Skywalker. I don't know if that would have been made more sense than Rey taking the name Skywalker.
And also, why? Okay. We accept it now that it was that Ben died. Why was he not at the Force Ghost? Because we saw he disappeared. Why was he not standing beside his mom and mom's brother, like uncle, whatever?
Yeah.
Why was he not there? I felt it was such a shame. It was like he just redeemed himself.
It would have been nice to see him like giving a nod of like approval and being like, I saved you. I sacrificed the last of my life force so that you could live, Rey, and I'm totally fine with that. We're all together now. It's one big happy family in the Force afterlife, and you carry on the legacy. Yeah. But yeah, that's not what happened. And okay, I'm just gonna. It sounds like we're really nitpicking a lot, and that we did not like or enjoy this movie. There's still a lot of stuff that we did enjoy, and because we did laugh and cry and gasp all throughout this movie, and it did entertain us, because that is still what we expect from just any movie, or what we want from any movie or entertainment, is that it entertains us.
Yeah, and I think it was a nice send-off really to a lot of these characters that we have known and loved for some people for 42 years. Well, and even then, just that very small scene with Han appearing, and telling it was. Oof, that was a hard one, as you said. It's because it mirrors kind of the scene we saw in Force Awakens with
his death.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm almost tearing up again, because that was a very powerful scene. And
something that at least we did not expect. And you mentioned, like, at that point in the movie when they were at the second Death Star, the wreckage there on the moon of Endor. That was like the turning point, and that was very much the turning point for me as well, and especially this scene, because I knew, and we've probably known for a while, that of course they were gonna redeem Kylo. They were gonna redeem Ben. So how are they gonna go about it? That was more my question, and the way they handled it, like that made me go like, okay, I buy into it. I accept it, but mostly because of the way the scene mirrored the one that you talked about, where he killed Han, because that was a big thing for me. Like, you motherfucker! Like, you killed off my favorite character, like in any medium of all time, pretty much. And I had a very strong reaction to that. So for me, for a long while, I was like, you cannot redeem him. You cannot do that. But I did not expect for them to actually bring Han back and have him come back as this memory and be like, it's okay, you can do this. And even Kylo repeating I know what I have to do, I just don't know if I have the strength to do it. And then he did like what he probably should have done at the first time in this one. So them doing that scene, I know it's not going to work for everybody at all, but at least that made it work for me, and maybe you too. Yeah.
Okay, so I really, really, really hated Kylo's character. Like, really. Like, he was a spoiled brat that had temper tantrums whenever he didn't get whatever the fuck he wanted.
Yes.
And I was just over that shit. He was like a 5-year-old. And I'm sorry, but that was just, I was so annoyed with him, because we have all these very nice baddies that, of course, they were angry, but and they were like unnecessarily violent and destroying stuff and people, but they were always doing it in such like a calm and
cold and calculating.
Like, you know, when
more classical villain,
when Darth Vader just forced choked one general officer after the other because of they messed up and stuff. It's just there was something very cool and very, very villain like. I just cannot take a kid seriously when he's just throwing a temper tantrum. I just can't. And so that's really why I didn't like him.
Yes, and we know there's a lot of people who like him for exactly the reasons that you do not like him, and that's
completely fine.
Yes, and that's totally fine as well, because it is different than a classical villain.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
Once again, I was the one who just complained about Darth Maul being like resurrected, and I hated that. So, and I know a lot of people love Darth Maul's resurrection, and it's completely fine. Yeah, it's completely fine. I'm accepting that's just the way it is.
Yes,
and this is just my opinion. And I really felt like this movie really redeemed Kylo for me. I actually think, when I'm just thinking about it, I think Kylo's arc in this last movie was one of the main things I really liked about it. So, and that comes from someone who really hates the character. Yes. So,
and I actually really like the I was talking about Kylo and his arc. Like, we started out with him and his search for Palpatine, which I actually kind of dug. That was like one of the. I was still, it's not my favorite thing or anything, but it was definitely still. It's the part of the movie, the first part that was the one that I was like, okay, this is gonna be the hardest thing. Like, JJ has even said it himself. It was actually not like writing and doing like the ending and mapping that out. That wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was, how are we gonna start this whole thing up again, almost. And the way that they just from the get-go were like, okay, Palpatine's back. There are voices all over the galaxy. We've heard he's back. Kylo knows. Kylo is going to stop him. And I remember you looked at me like, what the fuck? in the movie. But you do get why, because Kylo, he pretty much became the supreme leader of the First Order, and he didn't want like anyone to come and take that away from him. And now all of a sudden Palpatine is back. What the fuck is up with? No, like, he does not. I've earned this. I'm gonna eliminate all threats to my position here as the supreme leader. But he got there, and he got to Hexagon, and he used the Sith Wayfinder, which very much just looks like a Sith holocron.
Yeah,
so they
it's totally a holocron.
Could have just called it that.
Yeah.
Why think of something new? But it was a Sith holocron. So he found that, and it got him to Hexagon. And then he got in there, and we got the opening scene with Palpatine, and oh, okay, he's back. Oh, I created Snoke, and it was interesting, and I'm glad that they didn't at least wait until the last 15 minutes of the movie to like introduce Palpatine. That they brought him back, because if we knew they were going to bring him back, so they might as well just get it over with from the start. So I just like that they did that, at least. And I liked that Kylo. I found it very interesting that Kylo didn't just go like, oh, okay, Palpatine's back. What is thy bidding, my master? That he was like, no, I'm gonna look into this. Like, what the fuck's up with that? I like that, at least. And his arc, as you said, bought into it, the redemption, Ben. But I would have liked for him to be the one who survived, as we said.
Yeah, good. That would have made a little bit more sense to me, at least. And
Yeah.
I understand. I completely understand why they kept Rey. I think I think Daisy Ridley did a very good job, and I think she's. I think it was very interesting to see everything from her perspective. But one thing, I was so happy. One of the other few things I really liked about The Last Jedi was that
oh yeah,
she was nobody. And she came from nothing. And she was not a Skywalker, she was not a Kenobi, she was not anyone.
But
And
then
and it's just I always have liked these out of nowhere people situations, because there's a lot of themes actually in this whole movie that I would love to go in and explain in full detail about how important some of these themes are, but we haven't got time for that. I'm just gonna say that I really like that she was nobody, and like once again it's also a bit with this resurrection thing that everything has to be connected to someone we know. Why can these people just exist out of nowhere? Like Baby Yoda. Of course we know the species, but...
Yeah, we probably shouldn't get too much into The Mandalorian, because not everybody has a chance to watch that show. But everybody probably knows about...
Roll back,
Baby
rewind.
Yoda.
I like characters that come out of nowhere. That don't have some sort of relation to everybody we know. That they're suddenly just defying everything. And
it's like a hero can be anyone. You don't have to be someone special to pick up the mantle and be the hero of the story. But JJ obviously had other plans.
Yeah, and then he made her Palpatine, and it's not that of course just made amazing powers and stuff, and they have to come from somewhere apparently, not just like the Force just creating small blips. But so I was a little bit sad about that, because I really liked that she was nobody, and I was actually rooting for that from the get-go, like from the first time we saw her. I was rooting for her to be like a nobody.
Yes.
So that was just a small thing, because I think we have to
start to wrap this up, because we want to do kind of like a.
Well, we wanted to just quickly mention that, of course, Star Wars is different for everybody.
Yes.
Because some of us have grown up with it, some of us have not. I have not. I was only introduced probably into the Star Wars universe at the age of 19, so I'm a bit late to the party. So I don't really have that nostalgic feeling about like the old movies from the 70s. I don't have like a nostalgic feeling as much about the prequels. I know I watched the first one, Phantom Menace, and that's why I like that movie from the prequels better than anyone.
Better than any of the other
any
two.
of the others.
Yeah.
And I know it's another story for other people.
Yes.
But I would never dismiss the fact that you grew up with these.
No, yeah, like for me, the prequel trilogy actually means a lot, because that was not my first introduction into Star Wars. Like I have a father who was pretty quick to introduce me to this universe. I think A New Hope was probably the first real movie that I ever saw, even though I didn't understand any of it when I was a child, because it was a foreign language. But I could still follow the movie. I could still follow what was going on, and the themes and the music plays a really big role in that, of course. But I digress. the prequels. I was about 8 years old when Phantom Menace came out, and then we got Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. So that was like the perfect age for me, at least, and I enjoyed them as a kid. I really enjoyed a lot of the stuff, and that's why they're probably higher on my list than they would be on yours, even though they're still at kind of like at the bottom compared to some of the other stuff. But yeah, as you just alluded to, Star Wars means something different to a lot of people, and you can go into this movie with different expectations, or you can come from different places. Like, if you go into this movie and you like really loved The Force Awakens, but maybe didn't like The Last Jedi, I would venture a guess that you're probably gonna like this movie, because it feels very much like a continuation of the story that we got in The Force Awakens, albeit very rushed. Yes. But if you didn't like The Force Awakens and you loved The Last Jedi, you're maybe not gonna like this movie, because it's very clear that JJ wanted to go in a different direction with a lot of the stuff that Ryan did differently in The Last Jedi, so he's kind of backtracking on some of that and retconning maybe a little bit of what happened, most notably being the whole Rey being nobody. Nope, she's not. She's a Palpatine. And here's this very new, interesting lead character, sort of, Rose. And JJ is like, nope, I'm going to put her in the background. Like, it's a minor thing, but yeah, then you're probably not gonna enjoy this movie too much. And if you haven't liked The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi at all, then you're probably not gonna like this movie either, because this is a conclusion to this trilogy with these characters that we've gotten so far, and they're staying in the lane of like telling this story. They were never gonna do a 180 in the last chapter and be like, oh, it doesn't seem like people enjoy these new characters of Rey and Poe and Finn, so we're just gonna move them to the background, and we're gonna resurrect like Anakin Skywalker and Luke all the other ones, and put them into the foreground and make them the ones that close off this whole saga. Even though that would have been cool to see, it would have been very cool to see like Anakin, the chosen one, coming back and defeating Palpatine once and for all for good, so that his sacrifice in the Return of the Jedi wasn't in vain. But that was never gonna happen. They were never gonna do that, because that would kind of be disrespectful to all the new actors and the new crew that has put a lot of time and energy into building a new story. And there are a lot of casual fans out there. Like, probably the majority of people that are going to see this movie are going to be casual fans or casual viewers who were like, well, they enjoyed The Force Awakens maybe and The Last Jedi, and it made them, once again, it made them laugh, it made them cry, it made them gasp, and it's just pure entertainment for a lot of people. So if they go out of this movie feeling like, oh, I felt entertained, then they're gonna say they like the movie, and they're probably gonna like the movie and say it's good. But that doesn't mean that, like, for someone who's like really steeped in the lore and who maybe has way more expectations or something that they really want to see or wanted to see in this movie, like, they're probably going to be disappointed then. So it's all about like what you go in with, and we are probably like definitely more than just casual viewers. I would consider myself to be a Star Wars geek, and I consume pretty much all the Star Wars content that I can get my fat little hands on.
And I'm a little bit more, I would like to call myself a little bit more of a skeptic fan, or like a selective fan.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely things I don't like.
Yeah.
And there's also things that I absolutely love and adore. I absolutely love and adore the old trilogy. And
Yes.
I love and adore like the whole I played Star Wars The Old Republic for like half a year nonstop. So that has also shaped the way I look upon Star Wars a lot. Especially the whole lore part and the whole, because I would love to see a TV series about the Old Republic. I would love to. I would absolutely love to.
Yeah. That would be really cool.
So I don't eat everything like with big enthusiasm enthusiasm like you did.
No, yeah, yeah.
So I would like to call myself a selective fan.
Yes.
So and I think there should be room enough for all of us.
Yes. And what I just wanted to say with like me, even someone like me who's very steeped in everything, and I'm reading the books and I've played the games, and I have a lot of expectations, a lot of stuff I would have liked to see, and but I also like to consider myself a realist, so I know I'm not going to get a lot of the stuff that I would maybe that I would like to see the most, and the story is not gonna go exactly the way that I maybe envision it. And I'm not saying that if you do have these expectations, or if there are things like if you really wanted Anakin Skywalker to come back, there's nothing wrong with wanting that. I just think you're setting yourself up for disappointment if you go into the movie being like, if they if they don't bring Anakin back, then screw this movie and anything else is just not gonna matter to me. I'm just afraid that you're gonna be really disappointed. And maybe you've decided beforehand that you're probably not gonna like this movie, and if you've decided that before you go into it, then you're probably not gonna like it. And we've mentioned this many times now. This movie is not for everybody. It is a closing out to a trilogy that got off to a good start, but it became very apparent that they had no overall plan for this trilogy. They didn't sit down beforehand and map out, okay, this is what's going to happen, like broad strokes in episode 7 and then 8 and then 9, and this is how we're going to bind it all together. No, it was more like, hey, JJ, how do you want to start this thing off? Oh, that's cool. Okay, Ryan, how do you want to continue it? And then, yeah, it's just the trilogy of missed opportunities, I like to call it. Because there was a lot they could have done, but they didn't do it. And now this is what we got. And I can still find enjoyment in it. And we can still find enjoyment in these new movies, even though they're far from masterpieces or what we would have liked to see. Ideally, we were entertained. We had a good experience with a lot of the stuff. You probably are way more skeptic towards The Last Jedi than I am, but it's still definitely not my favorite. But it is what it is. That's just what I wanted to get into. And sorry.
But all of these expectations, and they're so different from each other. We are all different people and different kind of fans. And we just we have so many different expectations. Of course, they're not going to correlate. Everything's not going to correlate with what's going to happen.
No.
So, yeah, and I'm not saying that you have to think or believe a specific way. Definitely not.
No.
I'm just saying that we are so many different people, and Star Wars to us are so different from each and every person. And we just have to keep that in mind when we're discussing these things, because I'm getting so frustrated and sad about what turn this whole fandom has taken.
Yes.
And it makes me so sad that we cannot enjoy or not enjoy things without being very, very, very rude and disrespectful.
Yes. Or having someone invalidate your opinion just because you didn't have the same opinion as that person. That's a ridiculous way to look at it, I think. And it's just it's a sad state that talking Star Wars is almost like talking politics, that you can't really get into a conversation without people getting angry at each other and being like, no, I'm right, no, I'm right, no, I'm right, and you're wrong. And it's sad, but I'm not blaming like the fans only, and I'm not blaming like only Disney or Lucasfilm. It's like we all have a hand in this in some way somehow. We got off like the movies could have definitely have been handled better if you ask me as a hardcore fan, but I get the way that they did it, and I get that's how it is. I'm still disappointed they didn't have an overall plan, but I've come to terms with it, and we can still find enjoyment in it. But I do want to say that I'm kind of glad that it's over now. with the saga films, at least for now, because then we can move on to more unexplored territories and new stories, new characters, like The Mandalorian, that it's getting a lot of praise and
Maybe put a lid
yeah.
on all of this heat that has just been generated from all of this.
Yes, yes.
So
And I actually want to make a. I'm not. We're not going to get into. I know. We're not going to get into the Mandalorian like spoilers or anything. It's just a small comparison, and it's something that someone else brought up. But I think the reason why a lot of Star Wars fans and a lot of people might accept the Mandalorian more and more kind to it and are saying this feels more like Star Wars is because of the scope of it, and it feels more grounded, it feels more practical, and it's probably because it is. And that is essentially what we got from the first movies, the first Star Wars: A New Hope. That was pretty much like an independent movie. They like George didn't have the biggest budget. A lot of people wouldn't even finance him. So I think people are maybe getting that feeling more from The Mandalorian and not so much these new grand effect-heavy blockbuster movies where they're trying to make it more practical compared to the prequels, which was pretty much like all green screen, and George kind of went overboard on that. But yeah, I think there's something there at least where that might be one of the reasons why people are getting more of a Star Wars feel from The Mandalorian and not the new movies that might feel more like a very, very well produced fan film in a sense. Yeah.
So a fun little thing here at the end. We're gonna rank all of the Star Wars movies, also the two spin-offs.
Yeah.
And
Just for kicks.
just for fun and games.
Yes.
Are you gonna say yours first?
I can go first. Yes. Want to start from the top or the bottom? All right. I'm just gonna start from the top. That makes it easier. So yeah, my favorite: number 1, Empire; number 2, A New Hope; number 3, Return of the Jedi; number 4 would probably be The Force Awakens; and number 5, I would say Rogue One; and then after that, it's probably Revenge of the Sith, Rise of Skywalker. They're probably tied there. And then I'm going to go The Last Jedi, and then Solo, Phantom Menace. No, Solo, Attack of the Clones, and then Phantom Menace at the bottom. But it's very muddled there for me. Like at the end, they're very like close, and it's not. I can enjoy all of the Star Wars movies. Even like Solo didn't do much for me, but I can still. I can watch them, all of them, still at least, and find enjoyment in them all. So yeah, that was my list. What about you?
Mine is not very different in the top. I have episode 5, Empire Strikes Back. Then I have episode 4, A New Hope. Then I have episode 6 and episode 7, so Force Awakens. And then on a tie, I have Rogue One and Rise of Skywalker. And then I have episode 1, Phantom Menace, because of nostalgia. And I just actually really like that. So, and then I have Revenge of the Sith tied with Last Jedi. And then I have Solo and Attack of the Clones, because it's also based upon how much thrill did I get out of it, like how much enjoyment did I get out of it, how fond am I of these movies, both in a nostalgia way, but also in like how much would I want to see them again.
Yes, rewatchability is a big...
And the only one I plain dislike and would rather be having my period in the tenfold way for a month straight.
Yes, you don't have to. Yeah.
Is Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
It's just no. Yeah.
Fair enough. Like
Yeah.
I have more of a nostalgic feeling towards that movie, and there's definitely parts of it where I'm like, wow, yawn, Anakin Padme. That's not that whole romance stuff on Naboo. That doesn't really do anything for me. But then I really like everything that's going on with Obi-Wan and Camino, and I dig
Yeah.
the battle at Geonosis. So
Yeah, and I don't have that nostalgia feeling
no,
about that movie at all. So
but yeah,
yeah,
that's fair enough. So Rise of Skywalker kind of came in like the middle towards the bottom for both of us, kind of deal, or pretty much like in the
middle.
middle. Yeah,
Yeah,
middle. So yeah, that's pretty much, yeah, that's gonna do it, because we could keep on going, and now we really didn't want this review to go for too long, and we said we didn't want to keep going for hours and hours. Now this is already an hour or more, but I think we've said pretty much what we wanted to say, even though we could get into some more stuff and some more details, but let's not. Let's just close this off with saying that, once again, we enjoyed the movie, we had a good time with it, but it definitely has its flaws, and it's not gonna be for everyone at all. There are gonna be a lot of people who are gonna hate this thing with a burning passion, and then there are gonna be people who really enjoyed it and maybe even like love it with a burning passion, and then of course all the casual fans and viewers who are hopefully just gonna enjoy it and have a good time. At least I talked to some people who don't really have any expectations when it comes to Star Wars other than they expect to be entertained, and they freaking love this one. So yeah, that's what I can say. And as a closing thing for me is, Christian Harloff said this, and I very much agree, that it was a fitting end and a good close to this sequel trilogy. When it comes to the whole saga overall, I'm not too sure. Like it was cool getting some of the connections. It was cool hearing like all the Jedi voices there. With they brought in a little bit from of Hayden Christensen and Anakin and Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, Yoda, but it's not. It wasn't 100% satisfying for me in that way, but satisfying in the sense that it closed off this trilogy, at least these new movies that I've come to accept and find enjoyment in. I'm just beating a dead horse by this point, so let's end it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like and comment and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Be nice to each other down there in the comments. Remember to respect everybody's opinions about this movie. It is just movies. It's all opinion based anyway. So there's like no right or wrong answers when it comes to did you like this movie or not. Just let people have their own opinions. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you as soon as possible. May the Force be with you always. Bye.
bye.